Hello everybody and welcome back to Broken Brand. I'm your host Stuart and I'm here today to go over briefly The Fall of the House of Usher. Netflix released it this week. I started the first couple episodes last night and finished the rest today. And this is going to be what I would call a conflicted review, or kind of review with a built-in dichotomy. Because I'm going to be looking at it from two different perspectives, and each perspective comes to a different conclusion. So, what is The Fall of the House of Usher? Obviously, this is a story based off Edgar Allan Poe's story, The Fall of the House of Usher. Now, the series, the story, The Fall of the House of Usher, is the outline to the series. I know, we're going to get a little English major here, but here's what it is. The overarching storyline is going to be the fall of the House of Usher. And there is 8 episodes. With the exception of the first episode, which is an introduction, each episode takes a different story from Edgar Allan Poe and expands on that and tells that story within the story. So you basically, we're getting 8 major stories of Edgar Allan Poe, story/poems, in one series. And there's a lot of Easter eggs of just from Poe's writing, his life, and different things, and it's quite interesting. But before we get started on the overarching and just kind of walking through these episodes real quick, I do want to backtrack and say a little bit about Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe was a very troubled man, and I got into him when I was a teenager, like most teenagers do. Back then it wasn't called an emo phase, it was just I don't even know what we called it back then. But, that brooding phase. And I got a copy of the complete works of Edgar Allan Poe from my mother. And it was her copy from high school. And I read all the way through it, loved it, found the stories interesting, found the poems moving. And if you read Poe and you read about Poe, about the person, he has 2 obsessions. And they are love and death. Those are his obsessions. And why does he have these obsessions? Is because he fell in love with his first cousin. I know, a little problematic. Don't worry, it gets much worse. He was 27 and his first cousin was 13 when they got married. She died about 10 years later at the age of 23. And he was distraught. All his poems are about his lost love, trying to find love like that again, trying to understand death, why his beloved was taken from him. Now, if you read articles about him, I would stick to anything pre-2005. I don't know what it is about after that. It's like people started writing articles. I guess that's when some of the modern movement came in, and people who apparently have read nothing but Freud started writing articles about Edgar Allan Poe because they can't separate love and sex. They're like, he was obsessed with sex. No, he was obsessed with love. And it's different. So, I bring this point up because it's one of the critiques I have of the series. But it's also justifiable in some ways. It's a weird one. So let me be brief. From a Christian perspective, and I'm a horror fan. It doesn't bother me when you see enough real life horror. Horror movies are just like children's shows. Horror doesn't affect me. It doesn't disturb me. It's fiction. My brain realizes it's fiction, puts it off to the side. Doesn't bother me. Nudity, I don't want to see it, but I know it comes up. As a Christian, I think most Christians should not watch this series. There's people out there like me that can definitely handle this. Watch it, enjoy the storytelling, enjoy all the combining of Poe's work and everything into it together, and keep it compartmentalized enough where it doesn't affect them. I know there's some people out there like, you can't see that and not be affected. Trust me. I've been diagnosed with PTSD twice. I can handle this. So, let's talk about the first episode. And here's the fun part. The episodes are actually clues into what we're going to get. So, it's the first episode's Midnight Drear. That's the first line from The Raven. And the final episode is called The Raven. And, which is great. I just blanked on the actor's main name. The main actor. Is it Bruce Greenwood? Yeah. He does a fantastic reading of The Raven. Like, it's phenomenal. Like, Netflix better clip that reading and just post that somewhere on YouTube or somewhere. It's great. Each story, like I said before, tells another story of Poe's. The Mask of the Red Death, Murder in Rue Morgue, The Black Cat, The Telltale Heart, Gold Bug, and The Pit and the Pendulum. Most people have heard of Mask of Red Death, Telltale Heart, and Pit and Pendulum. The other three, you may have heard of them. And honestly, I remember I knew Gold Bug, but I couldn't remember exactly what it was, and I read it real quick. Grabbed my book and read it real quick. It's only about 20, 30 pages. It's a short story. It's very good. So this, after the first episode is kind of like a gunshot. It's a shotgun shot. It does a lot of plopping everything right down in front of you. Explaining the characters and the things and the people, and it gives a lot. There is death, there's nudity, there's sex, and in that first episode, but not enough to like really just make you turn it off. But it is they do it well. What this story starts up is the House of Usher, Roderick Usher, the head of the family. It tells his and his sister's backstory a little bit and shows that he is now the head of a large pharmaceutical company. And he is wealthy beyond means. He's being sued by the Attorney General, and there's allegations, and all his kids are just spoiled brats, troublemakers, and just all that, what we kind of see in modern day life. And I don't want to say the series is woke. I don't think it's woke. It does sprinkle the message throughout. It shows, and that's why some of this makes sense. Some of the stuff that I really particularly wouldn't watch, or I would have edited differently, or written differently, or wish it was, I should say, doesn't bother me as much because of the framework. We're looking at an exceptionally wealthy family and peering into their lives as they are fully debauched. They are just, they don't care about who the partner is as long as they're getting physical gratification, drugs, backstabbing each other, a very unequal amount of perversions, let's just be honest, within this family, because they're just spoiled beyond belief. So absolutely, it's kind of hard to watch, but that's what the Fall of the House of Usher is about. The original story plays out as Usher telling the narrator of the story how he came to power, what he did, all the evils he's done, and why his entire wealth and family is being taken from him. That's the story. That's the story in the book. That's the story here. And it shows that he's doing this, and now time has run out. The the bills come due for his deal. They don't say the person they made a deal with was the devil or anything like that. Actually, they go to a lot of trouble not to say that the family made a deal with the devil, but some sort of other entity. And it's very interesting. I'm not going to give away a lot, but that's something that's kind of obvious from up front. First episode's a little rough. It's a little hard to watch. It's just kind of like, you're like, you really don't know. And sometimes a lot of first episodes of a new series can be, you don't know. So you gotta watch the second episode. And here's where it gets sticky. The second episode is by far the absolute worst one. Like, if I rewatched it, I would skip this episode. It's not that it's bad in its writing and its story. It actually shows how depraved one of the sons is, because it's about the youngest son, Prospero, and how depraved this kid is, because he's like early 20s, I believe. Late teens, early 20s. Like, he's completely depraved. Like, the worst of them all. And what comes down to is he throws a party that is, unlike the story, just a masquerade ball in the Mask of Red Death, but a party of carnal pleasures. How that way, just in case I don't have to say the word, but it makes sense, because this is what things like, Jeffrey did before he self-deleted. Things like that. These prominent people and powerful people would do stuff like this all the time. Or that's what we assume, that's what we suspect. But this is kind of in line with the character. We didn't need to see it. And this is there is the Mask of Red Death, the episode. It has the worst amount of nudity and the worst amount of death in the entire series. It really is. It's a rough episode to watch. Like, it's one of those, even horror fans would be like, ooh, that's a bit much. That's a bit much. And here's the funny thing. After episode 2, it's like they ramped it up really high, just seeing how far they can take it. Then after episode 2, just drops back down. The children, the deaths throughout the series are nowhere near as graphic. There is even less amount of nudity, even almost no sex for the rest of the series. It becomes more cerebral, which is what I was hoping for, and not just horror, because that's what Poe was. He was very existential in his writings and how he did things. So there's a lot of tie-ins. You can see they name certain things, and certain people have certain names from Poe. Certain places have names from Poe's writing, and there's so many Easter eggs. It'd probably take you a good day to kind of stop and freeze frame everything and break down some of the languages to see how much of Poe's writings and are Easter egg all around. Quite a few. But the story just goes on and on and on through each episode is about a particular child, and showing more and more of what happened, how the Ushers became strong, became wealthy, what they did, basically the backstabbing and the betrayal, and just the wrong things they did, underhanded things they did to get ahead. And it is really good. A lot of this is written full circle, and I don't want to give it away, but there's a lot of things that you'll see, like, here's where this storyline here's where this story starts, and it seems to circle right back to the end, like it's an infinite loop. And they do it several times throughout the series, and it's really good. So one of the most interesting one in here was Goldbug, which is episode 6. Episode 6. And why is it? It's because it's one of Poe's lesser known ones, but one of the most fearful. It's just, I don't want to give it away. Go read the book. Go read the short story. Honestly, I kind of wish I had known the titles of these episodes, and I would just sit down and read all those short stories over again. Because there's so much that they did. They really kept true to the theme of each story and how it did, and they advocate. This isn't some just cultural appropriation or just some, oh, we took it and it's a modern day reimagining. What it is, it's a really well done revisiting of Poe's work. I will say that I don't think Poe would have been all in on the graphic nudity. And some of the stuff that happens, I think he would have gone for and not gone for. But overall, this series is, like I said, this is a complicated series for me. As a Poe fan, as a cerebral fan, psychological fan, horror, somewhat scary for sure. It's great. But from my Christian perspective, it's just, I know who I would recommend this to and who I wouldn't. But I'm not going to sit here and say, you need to go watch this series. I'm just doing this to tell you there's a lot. There is death in every episode. There is really is only nudity and sex in the first 2. Everything after that is gone. It's only if they're wanting to talk about it, they only implied it. It's like the censors came in and after episode 2 and said, "Hey, no." It really is. It's a very odd thing. I remember after episode 2, I took about 40 minutes to watch a couple episodes of Total Drama Island, just kind of reset my brain. It was tough. Will I watch it again? Probably not. But if I do, I'm definitely skipping episode 2. It's just enough to know that Prospero is dead. So there's so much. It is such a well-written series. It is, from a Edgar Allan Poe writing perspective, it's well done. And the only thing, I mentioned the messages here on out, and there's so much social commentary because it's done looking at today. Big pharma, hiding and modifying test results, clinical trials, and things like that, hushing up the victims of those families. And so it kind of does that. But it also goes and really kind of attacks, I don't even want to say capitalism, but consumerism. Not capitalism, but consumerism. And that's a good thing to attack, but then they slide in that we took away women's right to say what they want to about their body. Yeah, I knew they'd slide something in like that, but it's at the very end of the series. And it's like one sentence. And I'm like, fine. That one little sentence of white privilege and the Batman with Robert Pattinson it did snap me out of it. And this one did too. It's kind of like, oh, I'm watching a show. Man, my suspension of disbelief has been ruined. So, it's one of those things. Yeah, didn't like that line. But hey, not everybody agrees with me on that topic. So that's okay. We have differing opinions, and that's okay. Some people are going to love this series, and some people are going to hate this series. And I'm just going to come down to it. I'm not going to recommend this series to anybody because I don't know how you can take it. Some people are going to love it. Some people are going to hate it. but it is a brilliantly written show. Like, if you took out the nudity and the sex, I'd watch it again tonight. I'd binge all 8 episodes again tonight and probably not get any sleep. It was great writing, great storytelling, great connection. Very few things that I even noticed that kind of was like, what about, they left like a little string here and there that didn't quite wrap up, but that's okay. It wasn't something massive that most people would notice. It's just tiny little things that I'm like, I bet that was there and they cut it. And it was probably just like a 2-sentence line that clears it up, but that's okay. So, with that being said, The Fall of the House of Usher is a well written series. And you're free to watch it and form your own opinions on it. But be warned, it is not going to be an easy watch for most people. So with that warning, everyone have a great and wonderful weekend. I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it.